Hi everyone, welcome. Just to quickly help me understand, who have we got in the audience? How many people here are developing a synchronous or social multiplayer app? Okay, cool. How many people are doing something that's asynchronous, kind of turn-based, or pulls people back in asynchronously? Very cool. How many people aren't doing anything social at all and are just here because the food's great and it's kind of quiet? All right. So today we're going to talk about connecting people. You heard a lot yesterday about how VR represents this amazing opportunity to collapse physical distance and emotional distance at a scale that no other technology really can facilitate. I've been living in this world for a few years, and as the Avatars PM, product manager for the Avatars team that was distributed across Menlo Park, Seattle, Dallas, and England, I've certainly benefited firsthand from being able to unify a team and give that kind of sense of having a tight relationship with people who are all over the world by pulling it into VR, moving away from video conferencing where people are on a screen and you don't even know who someone's looking at or whether they're even paying attention to you. VR has this amazing quality that can bring us together and make us feel like we're there with people and bridge emotional and physical distance in a way that's really quite unique. And that's because of social presence. We talk about it a lot. Social presence is that feeling that you're with somebody else. My kind of personal test for whether I've had a socially present experience has always been that at the end of it, I'll close my eyes and lift off my headset. And if for just a second I felt like I should open my eyes and see the same person I was just talking to in front of me, I know that I was in an experience where I really internalized that this was another human that I was interacting with in virtual reality. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to do with technology. When we get to social presence, magic happens. We're able to share contexts more than just sharing, voice and a picture of what your face looks like. We're able to do things together, collaborate, have agency in a space with one another. The challenge is that getting to social presence is quite difficult. It can take a number of steps. Getting to social presence in VR can be hard. You have to think about how many steps you've got to take to get into the same room, invite a friend to join you, set up the game that you're going to play or the meeting that you're going to have. And before that, you had to have charged your headset and made sure that you had time for VR and everything you do to schedule VR into your life. We want to make getting to social presence as easy as possible. And so when we think about the VR journey, we want to take a step back and say, well, what are the decisions people are making all the way before they've even thought about what they're going to do in VR? We want people to be able to browse for things to do in VR with others ahead of time, make it easy to get in touch with friends, coordinate, communicate, share what they're going to do, share their intent to be social with each other ahead of time. And ultimately, when you're in the experience, we want moving between those different social contexts to feel seamless and very frictionless, so that you and I can just explore VR together instead of having to kind of navigate all of the challenges of getting to the right place. So this talk is really about getting to presence and all the technologies that we can facilitate getting to presence with. As we've learned more about how people are even using VR, we've understood that this level of intentionality about getting to presence is really very high. If you look at our ecosystem, our communities, people use forums and they will coordinate using some kind of messaging system. They'll announce their intent to do something. They'll schedule calendar invites just so that they can get into the right place at the right time with the right person. So in general, they're asking, where should we go? A lot more than just thinking about, well, I'm here right now, come and join me. And we see those as two very different paradigms of how people get to interacting in social VR. This idea that, if we plan to meet in the real world, I would tell you, well, we should meet here in San Jose. I know a great coffee shop just down the road. It's got tables. We could grab a table for 4 this weekend. I might even send you a message with a link on a map that told you exactly where you needed to go. Doing the same thing in VR right today is like me saying, hey, let's meet somewhere in San Jose in America. Not the most detailed description of where we're going to be. There's no link, there's no map that takes you to exactly where I'm going to be. There's no table, there's definitely not a table for 4 and a reservation. And that's because really our view of the platform as we think about it today is, for the most part, kind of like this. It's opaque to us what's going on inside each one of the apps of the platform. We want to create a much more complete picture of all of these amazing worlds and places in our ecosystem. It's a rich layer of metadata that, if we know about it, we can use to let people know where they can go and allow people to share what they're doing with much more context and think about getting there ahead of time. Once we have that metadata, we're very capable of building the technologies that enable people to travel between experiences and do it as easily as possible together or alone, join people where they happen to be, plan to be in places. And if you have this metadata layer that is telling us all about people and places, well, on top of that, we can do amazing things when we start to think about other platform-level integrations, ways that we can give people a framework for navigating to a place based on something that they shared with a friend, or something that they're investing in an experience that brings them back. And while we're doing all of this, we also care a lot about helping you, developers, build the experience themselves, the social component that really makes people feel like they could connect in virtual reality. So today I'm going to talk about a lot of the newest features coming to our platform and dive into a few of the different facets of that picture we just painted. I'll talk about rich presence and destinations, which enhance discoverability, and deep linking, which we can now use to connect people and places much more effectively. I'll talk about some of the changes we're making to leaderboards as one example of a platform-level feature that benefits from this new metadata layer and the integrations that we're taking advantage of there. And then I'll walk through some of the technologies that we're actually helping to enhance social presence, so body simulation and spatial VoIP. And finally, I'm going to do a deep dive on destinations and rich presence, and just walk through a few different types of apps as examples of how you might think about using this technology to maximize your success on our platform. So we painted this picture, this platform that connects people and places with a rich set of metadata. How do we get to this picture? We need to define places. Then we need to learn where people are, and then we need to have a robust way of allowing people to connect with one another. And so we're doing that with destinations, deep linking, and rich presence. Starting next month, you'll be able to define destinations in VR. These destinations are your way of telling us about the equivalent of the cafe in San Jose, literally putting content within your app or experience on the map. A destination might be a level. It could be a public area or a lobby. It could be a specific type of game mode, and it might just be a user-created world. Anything that you believe it's important for people outside of the app to be able to know exists and see and jump directly to. And we're making these destinations quite flexible as a framework. If it's a viewable object like video, you're able to provide information about its duration. If it's a social destination, being able to provide context about how many people that destination might support, like a 3 versus 3 mode for 6 people. And then additional rich media that sits on top, like translated text strings and images that represent that destination in a really, really compelling way for people who come across it. And finally, a deep link message. And this is what we'll pass back to you when someone launches the destination. So this could be a string of code that you use to take someone to the right place in your app. With these destinations defined, we are suddenly able to start showcasing your experience at much more relevant moments in the user journey. This increases the visibility and distribution of your app's content, whether it's surfacing newly created levels or places, highlighting relevant destinations, or even just integrations with existing features. We can increase the number of entry points and ways that people can get to the great content that you're building on the platform. So an example of this is developer posts. This is where you can use a post that shows up prominently in our platform to announce new content in your app. Well, now you can attach a destination to a developer post so that people can deep link to a new level directly and just launch right into it from the post announcing that new feature. In a social context, we'll be able to surface destinations as options for people once we know that they're in a group. So with a party of 4, we can recommend a 2v2 battle because it's for 4 people. And destinations will be available later on to things like user-created private events. So as we announced in yesterday's keynote, we're leveraging Facebook technologies like events to let people plan to meet in VR with their Oculus friends. And they'll be able to choose exactly where and when they want to meet in an app if we know what those places are. So now they can schedule a specific type of game or experience in your app and a time and a place to do it and get pulled together and launch there and get there together on time, hopefully. So to connect our platform, once we've got these destinations into your app, we have an API for deep linking. We're putting a lot more structured data into deep links so that when someone launches the app, you know where they want to go, and who they wanted to get there with. These APIs are launching as an update to the platform SDK. And having defined destinations and integrated the deep linking API, we can create this frictionless experience of content discovery, engagement, and then directly launching into it on our platform. But it's not just our platform. You can use deep links everywhere. Each destination has a URL that you can share and embed. So we're making the experience of clicking a destination, deep link, and getting into VR as effortless as possible. So let's say that someone puts up a post about a new level or world on social media. Well, with a deep linkable destination, from my mobile phone, I could tap on that link. I'd go to oculus.com, and I could see all of my Oculus devices. I could tap my Oculus Quest, and then my device will remotely launch that content. So we've just collapsed the funnel from discovering a piece of content from, say, a social media post or a group post, any way that someone wants to share it with someone, from, in some cases, dozens of clicks to 2. One to say which device you want to launch it on, and then one to confirm on the device that you'd like to launch it. And that's an absolutely massive opportunity for increasing the awareness of the content in your app and helping people to get there. And it's really, really very flexible to use for anything. You could use this to enable people to share the worlds that they've created with their friends and family and give them a preview of the experience and then help them jump directly to the world that they've created. Or if you're just announcing new level content in the app and you want to promote it heavily and have people be able to do a one-click to get to the page where they can try it and play it within the app. There are so many ways that you can use this functionality. It's one of the times at Oculus Connect where I get to stand up on stage and say something that I literally believe is magic. And there's a reason we're all so excited about this, because we understand what people are going to be able to do with having this opportunity. So we want you to be able to broadcast your experience and let the people using your app broadcast your experience to get people exactly to where you wanted to take them, not to have to hit the wall at the start of your app and then navigate to the right place when you're telling them about this amazing new content you've just created. So we've talked about places. Let's talk about people. Rich Presence is built on top of the Destinations API to let people coordinate and much more effectively gather in VR. With the Rich Presence API, you're able to update the user's status and destination. So you can specify whether they're joinable right now, how many slots are left in the room that they happen to be in, the destination, and also additional metadata that helps us display what they're doing in a context that's most relevant to people who might look at that information, like their friends. And this API works with any room management system, so including Oculus Rooms API, but any of the other ways that you have to manage the instance or shard that a user is in. You can use our framework to share this information in a way that people can come right back by deep linking. Users will be able to see the status and specific location that people choose to share, making it much easier to get together in VR. And if someone's joinable right now, you can deep link right to them. We can use this rich presence to highlight opportunities to be social as people are browsing for things to do in VR. And we can also recommend destinations where there are lots of people right now. So you can see aggregate information that says this is the place to be. And it's not just this app. It's this specific thing that you love doing in the app. It's booming right now. You should probably go there. And this will also show up in 2D on our companion apps. So we'll surface rich presence with a deep link that will launch the app in VR and take people to the right place. Over the next few months, we'll be adding even more ways for people to broadcast their presence so that they can be quickly joined in VR. For example, integrating with the Oculus chat system that we announced yesterday. And with this rich presence, you also have an API to access the same information that you're providing us for convenience back in the app. So if you want to help people navigate to find their friends within the app experience itself, you have the same information in a structured format that you can reuse and put a join button on your friends in the friends list to very quickly navigate to maybe the right shard or lobby if two people ended up in different places and they wanted to find one another or gather after a match. There's loads of opportunities to use this to help people coordinate gathering in VR and getting to social presence. Of course, we're building all of these features with user privacy in mind. So users can control how their rich presence information shows up across the platform with the activity privacy setting. And we're adding new functionality which actually lets them hide the presence for a specific app. This is really helpful if you definitely want your friends to join you playing Dead and Buried, And you definitely don't want them to know about your fascination with BOGO and feeding it every day. So that's destinations, deep linking, and rich presence. To go back to my metaphor of the cafe in San Jose, if you're able to tell us about the cafe and put it on the map, well, suddenly we can start recommending the cafe. We can tell you when people are in the cafe or when your friend's in the cafe. We can even say, we hear you like cafes. Would you like to try this cafe with this destination? There's so much opportunity for us if we know about the content in more detail with more structured data to be able to do things with it that help you and help bring people together in your experiences. So later on, I'll go into more detail with a few examples about how you could set and configure rich presence and destinations for a few different types of app. First, though, I'd like to talk about leaderboards. For competitive experiences, leaderboards have always been a really great way to give users something to strive for, getting to the top of a specific community, or even just beating their friends at a certain game or certain level in a game. But leaderboards have until now been largely restricted to inside of apps. So we're now starting to make much more of leaderboards as one of the platform-level integrations with things like notifications, social stories, and a new surface for leaderboards themselves in our companion apps. So using our platform notification, we're now able to tell people when their friend has passed their score on a particular leaderboard. This will show up both inside and out of VR, on the Oculus mobile app, and in VR. And we've been testing this feature since we launched the Quest. I can tell you it's one of the most compelling reasons I get pulled back into VR is when one of my friends updates me that they wiped the floor with my score in a particular app. And this feature actually came into existence because the team who was working on these features is so competitive that one of the engineers just took it upon himself to build a front end to just our team's leaderboard scores, just to kind of show off that they were at the top every day. Competitive spirit is a game changer. But we haven't really been utilizing it to its fullest extent. Now we can. We can service these things at the platform level, reach you when you're not in the app at that moment, and give you reasons to come back. And it's not just limited to notifications. There are also new surfaces that we're using to show the high scores that people achieve in apps, so you can, with one click, challenge them and get back into VR at that level and play. And the leaderboards page that we've built will enable people to showcase their leaderboard standing and even go and check out updates to leaderboards when they can't get into VR. So the thing that's changed here really is that historically we knew that developers use leaderboards for a bunch of different reasons. In many ways it was for storing game save progress, things that we wouldn't necessarily want to show to users, and then obviously the competitive standing that it was intentionally designed for. And it's now possible to set more user-friendly title and context for the leaderboards, and also flag whether or not you actually want it to be visible at the platform level. You might not want a public-facing leaderboard for the game save leaderboard that you created to store some data on the platform, but you definitely want everyone to see the leaderboard for level 12 on your app, which is the competitive heart of the ecosystem you're building. And finally, you can now specify a destination for leaderboards. And this means that if I see an update from someone who just beat my score, with one tap, I could go all the way to the right place in the app to play that particular leaderboard and try and beat my friend's score. So it's tightening the engagement loop, enabling us to do much more in terms of discovery and engagement of the leaderboard content and give people a way to go right back in to exactly where they need to be to try and beat their friend's score. So we've covered a number of ways that we can increase the visibility, discoverability, engagement of the content in your app. Now let's talk about the app itself. The experience you're building, if it's social, hinges upon delivering a compelling sense of social presence. And we want to make it really easy to author immersive social experiences that enable people to defy distance and connect with others in meaningful ways. Two key systems that help deliver a sense of immersive social presence are avatars and spatial audio. Avatars make for a believable representation of another person, even if it looks nothing like them or is completely abstract. Having the avatar move in a believable way is critical to giving people that sensation of being with someone else in VR. The test that I mentioned earlier about taking off your headset and imagining for a second that they might have been in front of you. And audio, it turns out, is just as important. It can be quite immersion-breaking when you hear all of the voices of the people in a scene inside your head, because they're not spatialized effectively around you. Spatial audio immerses people in the social context. And it actually establishes familiar social norms in social contexts. People turn their heads to look at who's talking. signaling attentiveness, and facilitating conversational turn-taking. So relationships are enhanced by having spatial audio just because it's what we're used to doing as we socially interact. With avatars, we have an SDK that's used by a number of apps across Quest, Rift, and Go, and Steam with cross-platform support. And this year, we updated the SDK to enable more expressive avatars, leveraging new behavioral systems for eye gaze, blinking, and micro-expression of the mouth as it was talking. Something we heard, though, was that developers were really excited about some of these technologies, but wanted to use them with their own avatar style, because for a narrative purpose, this type of avatar visualization wouldn't necessarily fit. So later this year, we want to make the SDK support all developers' needs. And we're extending the SDK to enable you to use these features with any avatar style. So you'll be able to access behavioral simulation systems that drive compelling gaze, taking into account the salient objects in a scene, and moving the eyes with features like microsaccades as they refocus on objects that are close or near to you, all simulated based on game input that you're able to specify. But it also has blinking, nuanced micro-expression, lip-sync-driven speech, and what we called physically based blending, which is where we extract speech from the audio provided by the microphone, and based on machine learning, we have visemes that are broken down into muscle groups that we can animate using kind of different levels of blending and fall-off and onset that enable the mouth to move in a much more organic and authentic way. But we're really excited today to talk about a new set of APIs as part of the Avatars SDK that provide a more holistic view of the user, including the spine, shoulders, and elbows. And that's the Body API. This new data is informed by our ongoing research, some of which you saw yesterday, in full-body social presence. The API provides a physics-based body inference. So it takes into account whether a pose is likely based on the constraints of the skeleton, but also the coherency with previous poses, what you were doing. So it shouldn't be able to push you into a state that looks unrealistic. And you can see this is being supported across different styles here. And if you are wondering, yes, that's me, showcasing my entire repertoire of classic British dance moves. This performant and more accurate representation of the skeleton improves social presence by unlocking body language in a way that doesn't break immersion. And these new APIs also serve as a single unified access point for the user's pose. Everything that we're able to infer from their headset, hands, microphone. This single unified skeleton represents body simulation, lip sync technologies, everything we've been working on as an addressable point for you to get a complete understanding that will continue to improve as we develop new technologies and enhance the simulation. Finishing on a wave there. So with all these improvements to avatars, audio increasingly becomes the barrier to social presence. You want to feel as though the words you're hearing are coming right from the other person's mouth. Spatializing audio is normally incredibly resource intensive because it involves a lot of transforms on the audio to convert it from a single stream and place your head relative to what you're doing in the scene and where it came from. So it really doesn't scale very well. And that's why you don't see spatialized audio deployed across experiences with many, many users. So coming later this year, we're building a set of spatial VoIP APIs built off the technologies that enabled hundreds of users to participate in events in Oculus venues. With spatial VoIP, each user transmits a mono audio stream and their positional data. The system combines the signals like this from all the users in an experience and creates what's called an ambisonic mixdown. And this is something that takes into account the position and orientation of all the people in the scene and passes it back to the user. With that ambisonic stream, we're able to then position the audio relative to their head and perform those expensive transformations once for all of the scene around them instead of doing it every single time for each user in the scene. This means that we can support up to 50 users with spatial VoIP in a scene at an incredibly low performance cost per frame, and it doesn't matter how many people are there. So we've covered a number of new features today coming to the platform, and now I'm going to walk through the best practices for integrating some of the deep linking, destinations, and rich presence features, looking at a few different types of apps as examples. And I'll also cover some other ways to think about maximizing the leverage of your app at the platform level, some best practices in general for building social or asynchronous social experiences. Designing social experiences in the context of the broader platform, even if your app targets many platforms, is really important to success. We hope that knowing how we're thinking about social can help you think about how to build social apps that shine. So in order to deliver this platform that we talked about where people can travel seamlessly between and across experiences, there are two promises that we're thinking that we'd like to make to users. The first is that I should be able to join someone where they are. The second is that I should be able to travel somewhere alone or with others. If we can do both of these things, we've started to enable many different ways that people can gather, traverse, and plan for being together in VR. With the first, when we show a button to join someone, the expectation is that clicking it will take you to them. This is an action-first system. Someone's already gone to the app, they're already waiting there, they're available, they're joinable. I can see that, I can tap join, and I go right there. The second, though, is about helping two or more people travel VR together, plan where they're going to be ahead of time, and then get there. It's more like agreeing to meet at a restaurant. This second case is a bit more complex because your app doesn't know that we're coming. So both of us are going to arrive in the app at the same time. You haven't provisioned an instance or a room for us. But this is also the most seamless way for a group to plan where they want to be ahead of time and get there together in a way that facilitates social connectivity and can be discoverable and engaging all the way through our surfaces from 2D into VR. One thing definitely to talk about is the fact that a lot of this functionality involves system parties. Parties are a really light way for people to get together with audio only and then coordinate getting into apps together. So while rich presence and destinations will work across the board to enable people to see where their friends are and deep link to specific places, we're supercharging parties with these join capabilities and richer coordination features to make it really, really easy for us to know when there's a group and help them get to the right place together. There's also an element of redundancy, which is that if something goes wrong and you're talking to the members of your party, you can solve your own problems and navigate to the right place, just in case a deep link didn't work for some reason. So first we would define destinations. You can do these on the developer dashboard. And these are the things that you need to define so that we somehow have the metadata for all of the places within your experience. There are a few different fields that are required, but the ones I'd like to talk to here are the API name, which is essentially your internal code name for the destination, and the deep link message. This is everything you would like us to give you back when someone launches the app. So it might be a string of code, or it might just be a line of text that describes exactly what the app needs to do on launch. You can also set a user-friendly display name, an image, and additional metadata like the capacity of the room if it's social. And this will be used if we show the destination in the platform experience and is required for us to make good on making your destinations look really great in 2D surfaces. The Rich Presence API is how we share that a user is at a destination. This API is really pretty simple. You set the API name of the destination that the user is in, which we just talked about, and then you have the option to set a specific deep link message for that user. This might be the instance ID or room ID that they're currently in, or again, a set of custom instructions. But rather than just taking me to a place, this set of instructions is really the things we need to tell you to take a user to a specific person in the app. Again, there are a number of optional fields that you can use to set for additional context as we surface the user's rich presence at the platform level. So you can set the current capacity of the room, that maybe there are 2 seats left, or whether a game or match is in progress, and then you can set the start or end time so that we're able to say something like, there are 2 minutes left, hang on a sec, and then try and join again. The extra context field is used to set a string that appears to describe the state that the user might be in, something like looking for a player, or match in progress, 2 minutes remaining. It's really helpful for other people when they see their friends to know how available they are and know whether they can join them. And yes, I didn't mention it, but the joinability I mentioned previously is essentially how we know whether we could surface that you could join someone. So finally, let's talk about deep linking. You've specified the place. You've told us there's a person there. This is the API that we need to know about as the app launches to put people and places together. Every time the app launches or the system triggers a deep link to an app while it's already running, you'll get an application lifecycle update. And there are 3 things to look for. One is a set of users or a single user that this person is trying to join or join with. The second is the API name, the destination they're trying to get to. And the third is that deep link message. So if I'm trying to get to a destination, it's the deep link message that said, take me to the cafe in San Jose. But if I'm trying to get to a specific person, it's the deep link message that said, everything you need to know to put me with Tom at the cafe in San Jose. Whatever your app needs to route these people and places together. With these three fields, we can connect people and places. We'll only launch a user-based deep link if someone's trying to join someone else, or if someone's trying to, with another person, launch to a specific place. If you don't have any users, then you know that someone's just trying to get to a place, and you can check the destination field. And without that, it's just a regular app launch. So it should be very, very easy to quickly understand with an incoming deep link what you need to do, put people in the right places. So what about when things go wrong? We've all been there. You try and organize a group dinner, and someone doesn't show up, and they don't tell you they're not coming. Or maybe you're going to meet someone for coffee, and then they spend so long waiting for you to get there that they're not there by the time you get there. It's really good to plan for the worst-case scenario. Because a lot of these interactions happen at the party level, as I've mentioned, there's a certain element of redundancy, but there are still some ways that you can make this experience good for users in case something changes or goes wrong. So first and foremost, let people know. There's a really funny thing that when something goes wrong in an experience, people's first instinct is always to assume that they did something wrong. And we see this in VR when we do user research. People will blush when a mistake happens, even though it was completely not their fault. And it makes them hesitant to try again because they think that they've done something wrong. So you want to minimize that as much as possible. Send them a message, tell them, we weren't able to place you with the person you were trying to join. Even better, tell them what they can do about it. Help them help themselves. It's worth thinking about how you can prioritize connecting people above all else. So if someone's status is updated and I'm trying to join my friend Tom, but he's moved location, and he's still joinable, not over-indexing on the place that I'd originally said I was trying to go to, and instead putting me with Tom is the right thing to do in the case that I'm trying to join someone. It's also worth thinking that if something really does go wrong, you could put the person who's come into the app into a joinable state themselves. That means that the friend that they were trying to join can easily navigate back to them. It's good to avoid putting two people into a dead end and they can't get to each other within the experience. And then, obviously, to do that, you can use the in-app presence API to show UI to help people navigate across your app together to the right place as a really convenient, easy way to gather within your app. Finally, creating opportunities when things go wrong is really important in larger group dynamics. A good example is, say, 6 people try and launch a 3v3 match together, and because of some reason, one person at the last minute drops out. The worst case is that those 5 people are now waiting with nothing to do, and they have no way of saying, okay, our 6th person couldn't make it, let's move forward and play something else. Don't let a flaky friend ruin a good party. Instead, you could think about helping them matchmake an additional person into their group, or putting them back into the lobby so that they can find other people to do the same activity with again. Something that doesn't create a dead end in the experience for them once they've tried to gather together in VR. So that was a really super high-level description of how we'd use rich presence, destinations, and deep linking. But every social or multiplayer app is different. So I'm going to walk through a few different archetypes of how we'd integrate these features, in each example gathering being the thing that changes. This is how people form or group up with others inside of your app. And it does happen in really different ways, as we'll see. So the first way that you can think about this is the menu-based system. This is where, quite simply, you're either doing something right now or you're at the main menu. Apps with this setup normally use something like an invite quick match system to basically get into a paired experience, play a game, come back to the menu. And apps with this setup don't really have a point where you're in a lobby or a gathering space where you're hearing the other person or waiting for someone to join you. It's very, very instantaneous. The second system is the waiting room system. This is where you start off at the menu, you choose what you're going to do, you end up in a private room, you either say you want to matchmake or invite people to join you. And there's a place where you are inherently joinable for a period of time. Now, once the match starts, you might no longer be joinable, but for the sake of setting up your experience, you are in an instance at the point that you say, I want to do something, and you're therefore already in a state where someone could drop in and join you, even if the match hasn't started. And some people make even the gathering element here a social experience, so that your friends emerge next to you before you started a game, and then you say, go and play together. Others leave it in the menu, but it's still very much a gathering or waiting room type experience. This is also very relevant for apps like TV co-watching apps, where really that private room experience is recreated without necessarily waiting for something to happen. There are 4 or 5 of us in a room for 4 or 5, and then we're choosing what content to watch. That's very different from the third example, which is the lobby-based system. And this is where gathering and activity are somewhat separate. There's no expectation that all the people who are in the gathering space are going to do the same thing. And there's an element of serendipity, because you can wait in a lobby, hang out, chat, find a few people to play a game with, go and play it, come back again. The shape and size of the activity doesn't have to be in any way the same shape and size of the lobby. Dead and Buried 2 is a great example of this. It has a lobby system called the Town, where up to 12 people can hang out and navigate around. And then there are individual game modes like Shootout at the Saloon for 6 people. There are dozens more variants of how people build apps, ones with many lobbies or interconnected lobbies and user-created worlds. But hopefully these examples cover the different way that people gather specifically. So in the first example, the menu-based system, we'd create a few destinations. For example, Menu and Solo, both of which are single-player destinations, and then Friendly Match, which has a capacity of 2 players. We want people to be able to schedule events for a friendly match, and so therefore specifying it as a destination and indicating how many people it can hold is really helpful to us for letting people see that from the list of things that they could schedule to do in VR. But we create destinations for Solo and Menu so that we can share the rich presence for someone when they're in Solo mode if they want to say that they're joinable. So their friends can see what they're doing, and then with one click get into the same experience with them. So then we'd set up with the rich presence what's going on at a specific point when a user's in the app. So if they're playing a friendly match, they're not joinable right now because they're in the middle of a game. But you could use the Rich Presence API to share non-joinable API name, friendly match, and then use the extra context fields to indicate how long the match has left or whether it started a few minutes ago. When they're in a solo match, however, or maybe just in the menu, they might be happy for someone to join them. So you could use Rich Presence to say, joinable right now, in Solo, and that extra context field can be used to say, I'm looking for people, looking for a match. If the app launches Solo mode to join a user, we already have all the information to quickly put the 2 people together into a friendly match. It's worth, of course, thinking about whether or not Solo mode is always joinable or something that you want to give users the option to say, I'm playing a campaign right now, don't interrupt me, whether they're willing to indicate that their friend can join them at any time. So how you set those expectations within each app is very distinct to the context of what you're trying to do. But it's very easy to make a joinable experience quickly turn into a 2-player experience in a kind of drop-in mode. If the app launches with 2 players in the deep linking field, then you know it's 2 people trying to get to the same place together, and you have the API name, friendly match, to put them in. And so you can make sure that when those 2 apps individually launch with the same data, you put those 2 people in the same place. So what changes in the room-based system? Well, in this example, the app will generally put a single user into a room instance as soon as they've said they'd like to play a game, where they can invite friends to that instance or be match made with other people. And many of the apps that do this will automatically put you in an instance. They won't leave you in a menu without some kind of backing room ID for that reason. And we can create a few different destinations for the app, one for each of the different types of levels or play type within the experience. And here you can see some of them are 2-player, some of them are 4-player. For Rich Presence, when the user's in the multiplayer mode, before the match has started, they're essentially in a joinable state. And we can provide additional context like the number of spaces left in the room. And once the match has started, obviously they might no longer be joinable, but then you can use those additional context fields again to say how long is remaining if it's a time-based game, or how long ago it started to give people an indication of when their friend might be free. If the user's in a solo game, you can do the same thing that we did previously and give them the option to mark themselves as joinable or some kind of drop-in gameplay. And again, when the app launches, you could use the instance ID in the deep link message so that the thing that you've shared with us is the instance ID that we'll then share back to you to say, put me in instance 123, where Joe happens to be hanging out right now, making it very, very easy to connect someone who's joining a friend into the right experience together. Sorry, I'm going to skip that slide. So finally, let's walk through the lobby-based system. Here we've defined a few different destinations, really to just indicate the idea that the lobby can be huge, even though some of the game types might be small. and we expect that people will just spend time in the lobby, hanging out, waiting for other people. That's a space where they're inherently joinable most of the time, unless the lobby's full. So you could share the lobby as a person's rich presence. They're joinable. With the extra context, you could show that they were looking for other players to join them. And because lobbies are normally instanced, you have many of them, you could provide an instance ID for a given lobby. On the other hand, deathmatch, in this example, is a match that's in progress. Because the nature of the lobby might be that you wait in the lobby, figure out what you're going to do, and then get into a deathmatch mode. Once you get there, if it doesn't have drop-in functionality, you're no longer joinable. And just like the previous example, you can specify that additional context. Of course, if you do enable something like drop-in functionality, you can make it joinable and just add the additional context that says the capacity of the room so that people know there's 1 or 2 seats and I can quickly drop into the middle of the deathmatch. Something to think about with the deep link message in a lobby-based system is that there's normally a level of determinism between the activity you're doing and the lobby you end up in once you're done. So you'd gather in a place for 12, go and play a match for 2, and end up back in the same place with the same people. And that's where this deep link message framework can be very, very helpful, because you can really write anything you want into the custom deep link message for a person's presence. So here you might put both the instance ID of the match that they were playing, the drop-in match, and the instance ID of the lobby. And that means that, let's just say that the person doesn't get there in time. A slot in the drop-in match fills up by the time they've got to the app. Well, you know where to put them so that when their friend is done, they'll all end up in the right place without you having to do any additional routing or checking where people are. So we just talked through 3 different examples of how we'd use rich presence and destinations in action with deep linking. Before we wrap up, let's quickly talk about other ways you should think about making the best use of the Oculus platform for success. The first is parties. Particularly on the Oculus Quest, when the microphone is only accessible to one app or service at a time, it's really important to plan for system parties. This is how the majority of people stay connected between their experiences. And there are specific functions with OVR microphone that enable you to access a microphone in a way that it can be shared by both the app that's running and the party system. If you don't do this, it can create quite jarring experiences where someone launches the app and the conversation they were having with a friend suddenly stops because the app takes over the microphone effectively and stops enabling you to talk to the other person. There's also API calls that enable you to disable or suppress system parties as your app starts. But we'd recommend that you hold off until people are actually put together. Again, you want to give people the longest period of time while they're not in the same space to be able to talk and coordinate getting to the right place together. If you suppress the microphone for parties as the app launches, then they've lost all means of communicating with their friends in case anything goes wrong. So it's really important to take parties into account, designing a social experience so that people can continue to talk to people while they're navigating to the right place. The second is leveraging the friending API. If you look at some of the richest and most engaged communities on our platform, they're all ones where there are quite dense connected friend networks. And these apps really benefit from the ways that we leverage the friend graph to connect people back into experiences, like seeing when friends are online and seeing notifications when your friend beat you on a leaderboard, for example. There's actually an API for in-app friending that lets you quickly show a confirmation and then send a friend request from within your app. This is really great to integrate because you can put it on top of someone's avatar and essentially send a friend request from within an experience. Now, you might not want to interrupt the experience to send a friend request right then and there, but something to think about might be a post-match summary of the people you played with that lets you quickly friend those people so that you can play again. It's also worth taking advantage of developer events. These are events scheduled by you where people can subscribe to them, get a notification, and a reminder to get back into VR. And there's a similar deep linking pattern that will take them to the right place within your app. Events are a really great way to catalyze community. You're bringing people together, especially if there's a lobby or a matchmaking system. You can use developer-created events to create game nights or specific league moments and tournaments. Anything that gives people a reason to congregate in your app, meet each other, have a great time and a memorable experience, and then continue coming back. Finally, think about how you leverage sharing to increase the distribution of your app. The sharing API allows you to pass an image to the platform. we'll launch a share sheet that quickly allows people to share that image to their Facebook timeline or a Facebook group. And it's a really great way to let people capture a moment from VR and distribute it to friends and other people from their community. Unlike the camera that's built into our system, the sharing API lets you effectively write whatever you want as the image that gets shared. So you can think about a third-person camera in your scene for taking a selfie. You can also change the resolution and quality of the image that renders on that camera for just one frame as you capture the image, or composite your logo onto the photo. Do a stylish photo frame or something like that around a selfie. But there are loads of really great ways to leverage sharing as a way of helping people outside of the experience understand what's going on. And it's a very powerful API that you can take advantage of, built already live today. So today we talked about how we can connect people in VR, finding new ways to showcase the people and the places with our metadata framework. And we're going to give them and you amazing ways to get people into the same experiences and help people discover your content. Also talked about avatars and VoIP, the improvements we're making with the body API and spatial VoIP to help you build more scalable, more immersive social experiences. And finally, we just walked through some best practices for integrating new discoverability features and making the most of existing platform features. These increase the footprint of your app, help more people find it and get to it. So when we head back to that favorite cafe example that I just used earlier on, now you can imagine someone's waiting for their friend to join them, checking out all of this content, and with one click being able to launch that content and get to VR in a very, very effective and frictionless way, helping users discover opportunities to be with their friends and more reasons to get to the experiences that you're building and connect people in VR. That's what we have time for today. If you have any questions at the end, I'll be happy to take anything outside. We have to clear the room so that the next talk can come in and get set up. But thank you so much for your time.